in the, I don't know, just Google it, Libro de Libros, and then like, or New Americas Now, and you'll get that. Probably that's the only way that I think you can get it if I did it right. So this is a bit of it, and stories there. I put it together, and that's my grandpa. Like when he came to the land and he bought his land, he planted a tree. There's something in that history too. Um, I have right here. Look, I did. I was just playing with it one day, and I like. Nah, never mind. I'm not gonna call nobody. Um, our dirt. Our dirt. Our gold. Um, Federalism laws, human rights, and right to life. We are seated at the right hand of God, and his regime with 10 days now, future, the new year too long. Um, so we're a few 10 days into the new year now, and that's a day too long, you know. So then I'm like, right here I got some that I just wrote. No, no, no. Like the app helped me. I don't know how I get into that though. Maybe it's this one. Hmm. Hmm. You'll love apps too. Oh, what did it do? Okay, so anyways, I'll just forget that one. So number two, the United Americas Estados Unidos, the union, a permanent merger of the North and South American land masses into a single sovereign entity. So that'd probably be like Texas, and where I was telling you guys earlier that um, Kennedy and Andres Manuel Lopez will put like by middle of Mexico. One part Kennedy went to school in, and then the other side it was all Mexicans. Like Kennedy was like only rare, like one of, no, they had a team I think around that time too. So anywho, the people. So Kennedy's like right in the middle of Texas, so we need to mark that. The people, the land belongs to the full blood. No, I need to redo this. So, like the way AI is speaking for me, it doesn't do it right anymore. So I gotta add it to the 2.0 process only. Don't update anything after that because I wouldn't recommend it. It takes up your storage and like, let me see. The spaces app. Oh, maybe that one's it. The word "gigi" is not widely used in common English, but search results indicate it has several specific meanings and origins, particularly in African languages, as a nickname. Here are most relevant origins and users of Gigi, sometimes spelled G-I-G-I or G-I-E in dictionaries. Language and culture meaning beanie. I don't know. Anyways, I would my Gigi is my nickname, and I would like be called that since I was a little girl. So even when I went to grade school, they called me that. And when I got older is when they started calling me Virginia when I started working. Um, I'm just like, let me see, helping us move this next part in life. Um, Glad to hear everybody's doing good. Um, I'm glad to hear it. I really am. It kind of made my day. I needed that. Um, my nickname was given to me as a kid. So yeah, that is my nickname, and I'm sorry I lied when I said no, it wasn't. Um, I'm not a liar though, so like I'm here. I'm always gonna be honest. But anyways, these things are like totally lies. Like I cannot stand that. A lot of errors in this. I can't believe it. AI is not working for me anymore. So, anyways, I'm working with it still, and I'm putting in my words better to make it better. But hopefully, it works. I like the last ones that I had did. Let me see. Um, it looks like you're. Well, yeah, let's let it read it to you. Why am I on here?
It looks like you're navigating the Wix Owner app under the site Bible Truth Books. This screen is your central hub for managing the specific functional parts of your business or organization. Since you're looking at the Manage Apps list, here is a breakdown of what these tools can do for you. Core Business Tools Store. This is where you track orders, and manage the physical or digital products you're selling. Pricing plans. Use this if you want to offer memberships or subscription style access to your content. Online programs. Perfect for structured content like courses, challenges, or digital workshops. Engagement and content. Events. Allows you to set up specific dates like a book launch or a study group, sell tickets, and track who is coming. Blog. Your space for publishing articles or updates. You can write and post directly from your phone here. Portfolio, a gallery style tool to showcase specific projects or past work. Hospitality features, table reservations and restaurant menus. These are specific to food services. If Bible Truth Books is strictly a bookstore or ministry, you likely won't need these unless you have a physical cafe attached. Quick tip, if you see a feature you don't use, like the restaurant menus, you can usually ignore it. They appear by default if the corresponding app was added to your Wix site template. Would you like me to help you draft a blog post or set up the details for an upcoming event?
Let's go on. I guess I can do all of that, and I'm the owner of it, so I don't know. I don't know none of this stuff. I just bought to take.
It looks like you're navigating the Wix Owner app or a similar white label platform for your site, Bible Truth Books. You've got a solid set of tools here to manage your content and engage with your readers. Since you're looking at the Manage tab, here is a quick breakdown of what these specific sections do and how they can help you grow. Content management, blog. This is your primary tool for sharing insights or book updates. Frequent posting helps with SEO, search engine optimization, making it easier for people to find your site. CMS, Content Management System. This is where you manage large collections of data. If you have a library of books or a directory of resources, this is the engine that keeps it organized. Gallery, best for visual content, perhaps book covers, event photos, or inspirational graphics. Engagement and growth, forum and groups. These are vital for building a community around your books. You can host discussions, study groups, or Q&A sessions here. AI agents, a newer feature that can help automate responses to common questions or assist visitors when you aren't online. Marketing. This is where you'll find email marketing tools and social media post builders to spread the word about Bible Truth Books. Pro tip, analytics. I see the analytics tab both in the main list and on your bottom navigation bar. Keeping an eye on this will tell you which Bible truth topics are resonating most with your audience by showing you which pages get the most traffic. Would you like me to help you brainstorm some blog post ideas or a marketing strategy for your books? It looks like you're trying to add a mobile invite banner for your Wix site, Bible Truth Books, but you've hit a bit of a paywall. The screenshot shows that this specific feature, which prompts visitors to download the Spaces by Wix app to follow your site, is part of a premium plan. What's happening? The restriction, the Add Banner toggle, is likely disabled because your current plan doesn't include this mobile growth tool. The goal, this banner helps you turn casual website visitors into a dedicated community by moving them into the Wix mobile ecosystem where they can get push notifications and updates. Your options, option, action, benefit, upgrade. Click the Go to Browser button at the top. Unlocks the banner immediately and likely removes Wix branding from your site. Manual invite. Share your invite code via email or social media. It's free. You can find your
Yeah, so I did that yesterday, and then I ended up finding like other stuff. So like I guess I did enter it in the stocks too. So it's kind of big, but I don't really know much. I'm just like on my third year on these stocks. Hopefully next year it'll be big, or I lost totally. I don't know. I feel like it's not a game. I feel like we're getting progress here though, honestly.
Muchas gracias, muchas gracias. Adelante, Mónica.
I want to say how much we can get done
Nada
in
más
1 year.
para agradecerles la aprobación de nuestro dictamen, comentarles que es un dictamen que nos apoyó a realizar, o más bien realizó nuestra compañera exdiputada federal María Alejandra Hernández Godínez, que entró como suplente en el último año de la legislatura anterior. Y quería también, pues, ahora sí que honor a quien honor merece, dejó esta iniciativa ahí, pues no le alcanzó el tiempo para que pudiera ser dictaminada y pues ella me cedió la oportunidad de poder presentarla. Agradecer al secretario técnico por su apoyo y a usted, presidenta, y a todos los integrantes de la comisión. Muchas gracias.
Dejamos registrada el reconocimiento tuyo a quien hizo en la pasada legislatura la primera manifestación en este sentido. Pues agradeciéndoles a todas y a todos ustedes el trabajo que hemos venido realizando en la comisión. Yo quisiera informarles que hemos venido desahogando con un buen ritmo los temas que nos han sido presentados. En el mes de enero llegaron por parte de la
they're doing elections right now, and election season isn't until November. Why are they doing this?
Pero lleva la comisión un muy buen ritmo de
Right here in
trabajo gracias
Texas.
al esfuerzo y a la participación de todas y todos ustedes. No existiendo más temas pendientes por tratar, se da por clausurada la 11ª sesión ordinaria de la Comisión de Gobernación y Población, siendo las 7:08 del día 3 de marzo del 2025. Muchas gracias a todas y a todos por su trabajo.
I love it. Gracias. I love it. I love everything I'm seeing today. I'm very happy with the things that you can do on this side. They say today's the last final eclipse.
Buying something small could truly keep Israel alive? Right now, Israeli small and family
I don't know why anybody would want to kill anybody. Why would they do that?
Families are under.
We didn't feed everybody, so like that's why too. I didn't want to like think of me first. Everybody needs to eat, and everybody needs to live a good life. But I don't know how to ask. But today, then I heard to ask God to bendíceme, and I never heard of that. But I would like to ask that. And what else? Like if he can. Bendíceme. Have you ever heard of that word? I wonder what it means. Bless me? Oh, they're calling me already. No, I'm just kidding. No existe. Palestine exists through Naida Kelly, and it was a religion, not a race. House Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Policy Committee. We gave them the authority.
Welcome to the Fraud Prevention
Prevention and State Oversight
Okay,
hearing.
I'm
It
glad we're
is
here.
Monday, March 2nd, and I welcome everyone to the committee. We are not going to approve the minutes until we have a quorum. Representative Hudson is on his way, so we will just give it another minute. But in the meantime, I wanted to start by inviting our committee page to introduce herself. Welcome, appreciate
Oh, I love it.
committee this year, both of you. And so if you wanted to introduce yourselves, we'd love to know a little more about you.
My name is Liz. I am excited to be one of the pages this year. I'm originally from Chicago, and this is my first session at the house.
So welcome.
Like when you're going to confession.
Thank you.
You see how Father, this
Thank
is,
you both. We really appreciate your work
I
during
love
the
it.
session. All right.
That's confession, concession.
So we are going to start with our presentation
A lot of
from
words.
the Department of Human Services. The subject of the hearing today is non-emergency
They're
medical
living it already,
transportation.
the Catholic whole
And
thing.
I'm happy to welcome James Clark, Inspector General, and John Connolly, Deputy Commissioner, and Ms. Grom. I want to note for the record and the public that the commissioner, newly appointed as a full commissioner, is
I want to
not
call him
here. She
Catholic.
declined, as did we requested the person responsible
Oh,
for NEMT.
I'm
Diego
Virginia.
Luis, and he is
I'm
also not here.
Catholic.
So I'm frustrated, as you can tell, that the people who are actually overseeing this program, I know Mr. Conley also has oversight of it, but the person directly responsible for the program is not here to testify before the committee today. Please introduce yourself for the record and begin your opening remarks.
Robbins, Lee Pinto, members of the committee, thank you. And to confirm, I am responsible as Medicaid Director for the Medicaid benefits that we're discussing here today. So glad to present to you all and to answer questions, stand for questions afterward. So thank you again for the opportunity to present in front of the committee today on non-emergency medical transportation. I believe this is now the 8th appearance in front of this committee. Access to transportation is essential to all Minnesotans. We need reliable transportation to get to work, school, and to doctor's appointments and other medical services. Without that access, choices are limited. Today, I'm focusing on a program that gives over 100,000 Minnesotans enrolled in Minnesota healthcare programs the ability to get to medical appointments for the care that they need. Minnesota's Department of Human Services operates the non-emergency medical transportation program to connect Minnesotans on Medicaid, known as medical assistance, as well as children on Minnesota Care, to medically necessary appointments. In 2025, this program served over 250,000 people at a cost of $127 million. Participation in the program has grown by roughly 14% over the past 5 years, and we expect to see a steady increase as Minnesota's population and need increase and as our continues to age. Non-emergency medical transportation is one of the 14 Medicaid services we have focused on with you as high risk. It's also a program that federal law requires us to operate under the Medicaid program. Right now, we're in the process of inspecting and revalidating each of the providers in this program as well as the others. The 5,800 providers we're reviewing will include almost 2,000 non-emergency medical transportation providers. By the end of May, we will be on site to every one of these providers. Each transportation provider is required to have Special Transportation Services or STS certification. The STS certification process is overseen by the Department of Transportation, affectionately known as MnDOT, and includes ensuring compliance with 1, qualifications of drivers and attendants, 2, vehicle safety and necessary specialized safety equipment,
Oh, is that
3,
for Medicare?
general vehicle maintenance and inspection standards, and 4, minimum insurance requirements. NEMT providers are also required to undergo a background check. And with the high-risk designation, that would be a fingerprint background check with that designation. There's been a lot of inaccurate and misleading and flat-out wrong information about fraud in this program recently. One prominent social media influencer visited multiple transportation companies he claimed provided non-emergency medical transportation and declared they were fraudulent. However, a review of records shows the businesses they visited received Medicaid transportation payments, and several were not enrolled as a provider, something that's required to bill for providing Medicaid services. Meanwhile, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison's office has been investigating and prosecuting a fraud case involving 4 groups of people who made $2.6 million in fraudulent Medicaid claims, overbilling, double billing, and phantom billing for trips. In February, one member of this criminal enterprise pleaded guilty in exchange for testifying against others. NEMT is just a part of the work that we're doing to combat fraud, waste, and abuse. We've implemented an enhanced prepayment review system to catch questionable claims before payment is made, as well as analyzing trends in billing and claims to identify sources of potential fraud. We're also removing inactive providers from our system, so the data we produce is cleaner and trends are easier to spot. By June, we will have done on-site visits to revalidate each of the 5,800 Medicaid providers in our remaining 13 high-risk programs. In the report he issued this week, Program Integrity Director Tim O'Malley identified a pattern of benign neglect over the past 50 years that created the condition bad actors have exploited. Governor Walz has released his legislative plan for combating fraud, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you to continue working on this issue. We're in a unique place in that we all agree on the outcome that we're working toward. Even $1 of fraud is too many. We will do all we can to continue reforming our systems to minimize risk and harden them against bad actors. And with that, we'll transition to the slides.
Thank you.
All right, to begin, we'll start with an overview of the NEMT benefit. As I mentioned in the opening remarks, it is a federally required service that Medicaid covers in every state, known as a mandatory benefit in the parlance of the Social Security Act. It provides transportation to medically covered services, so medical necessity must be established for the service to which and from which someone's receiving transportation in the program. It covers 7 modes of transportation based on the person's acuity and need, and it ranges from personal mileage, so somebody using their own vehicle, to transportation by stretcher. And there are several different gradations between. So that could include volunteer drivers, unassisted drivers, assisted transportation, somebody who needs help getting into and out of vehicles and out of facilities in their homes, a ramp or lift equipped vehicle, protected transport for people in mental health crisis, and as I said, the highest level is transport with a stretcher. I should note that the lower levels of acuity are administered by agencies. The state administers the higher modes 5 through 7, as well as managed care organizations. Notably, this benefit will be carved out of managed care and will be transferred into a single administrator on January 1st, 2027, and an earlier transition to the single administrator will occur on July 1st of this year, 2026, for the fee-for-service program. Prior authorization or approval is required for longer distance rides. That includes rides over 30 miles for primary care, rides over 60 miles for specialty care, and modes requiring assistance or specialty transport like the ones that I mentioned, levels or modes 4 and above, as well as out-of-state transportation for counties and other states that aren't contiguous to Minnesota. Moving on to the next slide, you can see here an overview of the providers and broken down by the fee-for-service side of the program relative to managed care organizations. On the fee-for-service side, we have roughly 550 providers in the program, a bit over 1,100 on the MCO side in 2024. And you can see here the recipients, 40,000 on the fee-for-service side, a little over 214,000 on the MCO side. But you can see the vast majority of people and claims are on the MCO side or within their purview. I'll note in terms of the spending, there were increases in both fee-for-service and MCO. Notably, the fee-for-service increase was in part due to an increase in the rate passed by the legislature between 23 and 24. So that was partially due to utilization, but also a rate increase, again, passed by the legislature. Next slide. Okay, moving on to some provider requirements for the program. So to provide and bill for NEMT services, the provider must be enrolled with Minnesota healthcare programs, and that's both the transportation organization or the agency, as well as individual drivers. And enrollment includes looking at things like any certification requirements, checks against federal and state exclusion lists. So if they're excluded from Medicare, for example, they wouldn't be able to enroll in the program. Ownership disclosure, who has an ownership interest, and review of that information. Site visits to confirm operational business locations and look at operations, and background studies. And in this case, as a high-risk provider type, that would include a fingerprint background study. I mentioned the MnDOT Special Transportation or STS rather certificate, including vehicle and driver requirements, and then of course required documentation for each ride, including origin and destination information on the claim. Next slide. All right, a bit more about provider requirements for billing and payment. Providers are paid with a couple of different components. The first is the base rate per ride, and then depending on the distance, there is a per mile rate component as well. That's part of the calculation of the payment rate. Again, payment is based on the individual's assessed mode of transportation, and that's based on their medical necessity and need for assistance or the type of transportation that's appropriate for them. Modes 1 through 7, some administered by counties and others administered by the state or MCOs. Fee-for-service rates, as I mentioned, are specified in statute. Again, the most recent rate increase, I believe, was in 2023, passed by the legislature. Payments have add-ons or adjustments for transportation in rural areas of the state or due to higher fuel. And notably, NEMT providers cannot bill for what's called no-load miles. So that means if there is not a member, a person who is enrolled in Minnesota healthcare programs, there is not the ability to bill for the service. And of course, drivers, if they're waiting to pick somebody up at a facility or at their home, that time is also not reimbursable. And I think with that, I transition over to General Clark.
Good morning. Welcome to the committee. Inspector Clark, please state your name for the record.
Good morning, everybody. James Clark, Inspector General at the Department of Human Services. So this slide lists the program integrity actions we have taken over the last year. We've talked about these actions publicly in front of this committee, so I won't go into too much detail now, but I will say that several of these new program integrity actions apply to NEMT services, such as prepayment review of claims, disenrolling inactive providers, revalidation and increased site visits, and an enrollment pause for new providers. Next slide. So the governor's anti-fraud proposals will help to prevent and detect fraud in NEMT and other Medicaid services. The proposals include a pre-enrollment risk assessment. I think this is extremely important. This would allow us to better vet businesses before they. Ideally, we should be assessing risk by looking at businesses' history of performing Medicaid services, their financial stability, and their business plans before allowing them to enroll in our programs. We should not be doing business with people and businesses that pose too great of a risk to the Medicaid program in the state of Minnesota. Discussions of Medicaid fraud typically focus on investigations and prosecutions, but by the time fraud issues get to me or to state or federal prosecutors, money is already gone and it's probably too late. I think any conversation about Medicaid fraud must be focused on keeping unserious businesses and would-be criminals out of our programs in the first place. In order to do that, we need to better vet risk on the front end prior to enrollment. The governor's proposal also contains requests for increased staffing and better technology to detect and prevent fraud through prepayment and post-payment review of billing data. We are responsible for oversight of over $20 billion of spending and 300,000 enrolled Medicaid providers. Given the complexity and scale of the Medicaid program, we need technology solutions that can better spot suspicious trends and red flags, and so that it will inform our investigations. Finally, the proposals also include a requirement for electronic visit verification for NEMT and other services. It'd be very helpful to have an electronic record of a trip that we could then compare to billing. Next slide, please. So this slide shows some of the program integrity efforts that are currently in place for NEMT. So NEMT is classified as a high-risk service. That means we do enhanced background studies and more frequent site visits and enrollment and revalidation. Starting this past January, there's a provider moratorium for NEMT providers in metro counties. This means that no new businesses can enroll in the program in metro counties. NEMT is also subject to prepayment review. This means that Optum is applying data analytics to our NEMT claims and flagging claims for further review. Finally, DHS contracts with a private sector vendor to audit the NEMT program. These audits compare billing information to provider records to see whether providers are actually providing the services they're supposed to be and billing us correctly. Next slide, please. So NEMT spending is largely overseen by managed care organizations. I think this is an important point. Currently 80% of NEMT spending is in managed care. So each managed care organization is required to have dedicated staff to prevent and investigate suspected fraud and refer suspected fraud to law enforcement. So just like the department has an Office of Inspector General, managed care organizations don't have an Office of Inspector General, but they have compliance offices, special investigations units that are responsible for investigating, detecting fraud, referring suspected fraud to law enforcement, terminating providers, and issuing other sanctions against providers. Lastly, I'll just say I think this is important. Deputy Commissioner Connolly said this, but NEMT services are part of our revalidation efforts between now and the end of May. Each enrolled NEMT provider in the state will be subject to an unannounced site visit. In addition to that unannounced site visit, we will be verifying ownership and the credentials of the business to ensure that they are a valid NEMT provider. That's all I have for this.
Chair Robbins, we're glad to stand for questions.
I'm sorry?
We're glad to stand for questions.
Excellent. Before we do that, I just want to, now that we have a quorum, approve the minutes. Vice Chair Anderson, did you have a chance to review the minutes of February 23rd?
I did, Madam Chair, and I move approval.
Thank you. Representative Anderson moves approval of the minutes of February 23rd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. All right. Thank you for your presentation. So many questions. I do not know where to start, but I'm going to try as other people get their thoughts together. I just wanted to confirm a couple things I think you said. So was it 14% was the increase in NEMT services? Was that recipients over the last 5 years? I just want to make sure I know that stat.
So the statistic is an increase. Oh, Chair Robbins, excuse me. Chair Robbins, the increase was 8% in the 5 fiscal years between 2021 and 2025. And then 44% increased spending over that time period. But notably, there were rate increases from both utilization and from, that increase is due to both utilization increases, so people using the service more, but also rate increases for the service.
So just to clarify, 8% increase in recipients
Yes,
or providers?
The number of people using
the service. And any increase in the providers?
So it looks like, I noticed there was a slight drop between 23 and 24. I don't know if I have the number all the way back to 2021.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed in the range on that slide. Maybe you can get back to us with a longer time horizon.
Sure.
The last 10 years, that would be, in general, I think a 10-year time horizon is more helpful to understand the trend.
We'll note that for follow-up, Chair Robbins.
Thank you. Okay. I have so many questions. So back in 2011, there was an OLA report that highlighted severe problems in this program. You mentioned that we are going to a one broker model starting next year, or starting in July, I believe, of this year, for fee for service. Who is that?
Chair Robbins, we haven't selected the vendor yet. The RFP has closed, and the scoring of the vendors that have participated in the RFP is occurring right now.
So there has been use of a broker in the past in the state. Who is that broker currently?
So my understanding is that one of the brokers that we are using is MTM.
And are they applying in this current round?
I believe, Chair Robbins, the answer is yes.
Okay. So this is of concern to me because when back in 2011, the report came out by the OLA, they talked about savings from the broker. There were some positive things. But at the same time that this broker was selected in Minnesota, back in 2004, this same broker was under and did an out-of-court settlement with allegations of fraud in Missouri for the very same things that we are seeing in this program. So they were in gas mileage reimbursements, was paid for third-party vendor trips that did not occur, and received payment from the state in excess of what it was allowed to contract. And the OLA report from 2011 said that very same thing. They got more payments than they were allowed to contract for, and they got an inappropriate cost of living adjustment. So in real time, when you were using them, they were under court orders to stop for fraud in Missouri. So why have they continued to be used in this state? And why are they allowed to apply to be the broker again?
Chair Robbins, I think we will use the totality of the information that we have to select a vendor and appreciate you reviewing some of the issues with the vendor. I think more primarily our experience with MTM here in Minnesota would inform kind of our decision about whether or not to have them as a vendor within the state. Certainly, if there's concerning information about the vendor that is actionable, we would want to know that and take appropriate corrective action to ensure, again, the integrity of the program and billing on their part.
Were you aware of what I just told you?
I personally am aware, Chair Robbins.
So I don't know what actions you're taking to vet these people, but this was a Google search. So we expect more from the department in making sure that the brokers, the vendors, everyone is well vetted. And I hope you will take that seriously. I have more questions, but I'll let someone else go. Lead Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The slide 10 jumped out at me, the managed care oversight of the program, and I don't know if any of you know this, but do you know where that comes from? Is that a statutory? Is that established in statute? Was that an agency policy to outsource oversight of the program to MCOs? Anybody happen to know?
Mr. Conley.
Chair Robbins, Lead Pinto, yes. The role of managed care plans is dictated in statute.
Okay. And if I may,
Yes.
Madam Chair, thank you. Yeah, so that might be something for us to look at then. I mean, we've had conversations within our committee about the problems that occur when we take public services and we outsource them to private entities. That happens all over, and we know that so much of the fraud that we've been discussing has been in private providers, public funding going to private providers to provide public services. That's concerning enough. We should have conversations about that. But when we choose to outsource the oversight to private entities as well, I think that's particularly problematic. Obviously, the agency is just doing what the legislature tells them to do in this case. So we really, in our case, should be looking into whether we would want to be outsourcing oversight over public programs to private entities. Because then you've got multiple layers of privatization at that point, and may well make sense to bring that back in house. So something we should be looking at. I did have a process question, Madam Chair, for you.
Yes.
You referenced earlier about the commissioner not being here. I noticed that nearly half of our committee meetings DHS has presented, and every other meeting the commissioner's been here. Was there a particular reason that this meeting particularly concerned you for the commissioner being absent, since she's been here for all the other ones?
I thought it was just interesting now that she's been officially named commissioner that she chose not to attend in her first official capacity as commissioner.
And maybe, Madam Chair, that maybe in that role she actually has even more responsibilities, but she's certainly been here the other time. So thanks to all of you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I just want to invite the testifiers who are listed to join us. We'll start with Mr. Stahlberger and then Mr. Priscilla, who I believe is online. But please don't go anywhere. We have more questions for you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Phil Stahlberger, Senior Vice President, Public Affairs at MTM. We do operate in the state of Minnesota with 18 counties here in Minnesota. And I'll just address the question you talked about earlier. The contract dispute in Missouri was about 15 years ago. This benefit has evolved quite a bit in numerous states. We are currently the contract vendor in Missouri and in 45 other states, and work with a lot of MCOs in states across the country. So the contract dispute was about basically what was in the contract versus what we were getting paid for. So it was, again, about 15 years ago, and I think since then we've all states have gotten better at looking at what their NEMT process looks like.
Thank you for that. I would just like to point out that at the same time, Minnesota was
in the same place with our OLA report saying that you were overpaid and that you got inappropriate cost of living adjustments. So the issues you were having in Missouri, you also had here in Minnesota at the exact same time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The OLA report in 2011 covered all of NEMT services, not just MTM. That include managed care. And I think it was $1.8 million had to go back to the state. Believe most of that came from managed care contracts, not MTM. But the OLA report covered all of NEMT services.
All right, please proceed with your testimony.
Sure. And I'm going to, given the previous overview and your questions, I'll probably skip a lot of my prepared remarks and just highlight that after 2004, the state of Minnesota was actually barred from working with any vendor to coordinate transportation services. Actually, Governor Plenty hired us back in 2004 and to coordinate the entire state of Minnesota. A number of transportation providers were not okay with regulations, and so the state legislature actually passed a law that said the state of Minnesota could not coordinate rides across all of NEMT. That has now changed as of last session, and we are now moving to a full broker model. Yes, we are applying and did apply for this RFP. And I think if you talk to the 18 counties we work with here in Minnesota, that is fee-for-service population, as the Medicaid director indicated, a majority of the rides happening within Minnesota, within NEMT, happen in the managed care space, of which we do not have a contract with either of the 3 or 4 MCOs. We did have a contract with United Healthcare prior to them not being allowed to service Medicaid here in Minnesota. So we've been in Minnesota since 2003. Our processes are, as you heard earlier, similar to the state of Minnesota. We do provide on-site regulations for our transportation providers. We work with about 35 companies in the state. And again, we're in the 12-county metro area, and then the other county consortium is in northeastern Minnesota. So those 18 counties are just fee-for-service, and we do about 500,000 trips, coordinate 500,000 trips with those 35 transportation provider companies in the state of Minnesota. We do on-site visits and make sure that drivers have a disclosure of ownership, proof of insurance, background checks, UMPI, which is the unique Minnesota provider identifier. We basically make sure that those companies are who they say they are and they're actually doing Medicaid rides. In addition, we actually do trip verification where we call the facility itself and basically make sure that, say Mrs. Jones orders a ride, that they're actually going to their appointment. Like I said, we do random on-site observations at medical facilities and hospitals to make sure all providers are credentialed, is accurate and up to date. They are unannounced audits, provided an additional layer of protection to our annual credentialing process. Anytime we receive a complaint from somebody on Medicaid or from a transportation provider, we do have a process internally to vet those processes to make sure that there is no fraud happening. If we suspect there is, we do turn that over to the OIG, Attorney General's office, or whatever state entity is looking at those. Again, we're in 45 states across the country, and this is probably one of the hardest benefits within Medicaid to understand. And again, as previously noted, there's a lot of misinformation. It's confusing. Medicaid is confusing. The NMT benefit is also extremely confusing. Transportation providers that we work with are simply trying to do their job in providing rides to and from appointments for people on Medicaid. Prior to this year, rates for fee-for-service were put in statute, and those rates oftentimes weren't even increased for 5 years. And so we were not allowed to pay providers maybe even the going rate. Whereas in a managed care contract, when they're based on a PMPM, they probably have a little more flexibility in paying more. For example, CMS does encourage states to use a broker model, and it's become one of the best standards to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse, and detecting it as well. Having said that, there are a lot of transportation providers out there that maybe aren't even in Medicaid. Again, as the Medicaid director talked about, there are such things as social determinants of health social services contracts that some of these providers do work with other county governments. They may not be working with us or the MCO. They might be doing something completely different. So we believe there is room for improvement here in Minnesota. We're happy to see that DHS has taken the authority to finally coordinate statewide NEMT services across the entire state with one uniform set of rules. If you think about our current process, prior to July 1 of this year, basically when the state precluded that DHS could not coordinate rides, every 87 counties had to do it themselves. And so even though we work with 18 counties here in Minnesota, we have another 20 or 30 that are banging on our door saying, we can't do this, we need help. So there's kind of almost three models, if you will. There is fee-for-service population, and then there's the managed care. So you have 3 or 4 entities doing their own rides, and you have the county-based purchasers. Everybody does it kind of their own way, and so you have multiple ways for providers, transportation providers, to work with one of the 5 or 6 entities. Sometimes they have different rules in place. Having said that, knowing my 2 minutes is probably up, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Representative Elkins, I do want to get
Just
all the
quick
testifiers through, and then we can ask more questions.
just-
But I will.
This is real quick. Who would you consider your largest competitors to be? Are there several competitors in your space?
Madam Chair, Senator, we do have numerous competitors in our space. The largest competitor in the United States filed for Chapter 11 this year. They are coming out of reorganization. We are probably the second largest in the country. From there are 3 or 4 other handful of companies that do try to coordinate rides. As I said earlier, it's a tough business, and we'll always get new entrants into the market that either get gobbled up by another company or frankly can't make it because it's a tough business. So there are also regional players as well that do end up competing in this business.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, Mr. Prisbilla. If I'm saying that correctly, I believe you're online.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair Robbins.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and begin your testimony.
Sir, Prime West Health. Thank you for having me today. I'm John West Health. Non-emergency medical transportation, because we're rural, critical service for our members because there are great distances to travel, and a lot of people have the means to get to those healthcare services that require a great deal of travel. We've had experience and have been victimized, but have also been combating fraud in the EMT space. And I'll turn that over for that discussion to Sandra Adams. Sandy, if you introduce.
During process, we uncovered a suspected fraud among certain EMT providers. We identified instances where members utilize specific treatment centers, and they would coach the members on how to answer assessment questions that they we further identified their enrollment to Prime West Health, participate in the scheme for kickbacks. And further find Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Minnesota Department of Human Services Program Integrity Office. Based on our experience, certain structural features of the NEMT benefit create vulnerabilities, such as agencies and drivers must meet MnDOT requirements, then they can enroll as providers with MHCP. MnDOT handles transportation compliance, and MHCP handles Medicaid enrollment and claims payment, which may lead to a fragmented system. For example, red flags that are not part of standard license checks, such as multiple drivers being associated with the same home address, which was common in the suspected fraud we uncovered. The second thing is that there's limited visibility into the number of riders transported in a single vehicle, while mileage is billed separately. Third, non-emergency medical claims are often paid before the related medical service claim is submitted. And finally, methadone treatment is a direct access service, meaning plans cannot require prior authorization, and members may seek services at any location. We remain committed to program integrity, collaboration with state and federal partners, and ensuring that members receive appropriate and necessary services. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Since you're on the line, I think we will take questions for you so that I think that might be more helpful. So my first question is, when you reported your concerns to DHS and the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, what response did you get?
They accepted our referral. So they notified us that they had accepted our referral.
Did they do anything else besides say they got it?
Certainly, they vetted the case. We received news from the AG system that they were presenting it to the director at the AG's office, and then they confirmed that they were going to investigate the case.
And how long ago was that referral?
That referral was in November of 2024.
Okay, thank you. And is that the first time you've referred to them, or have you had a history of referring to them?
There have been other referrals to the AG's office and DHS PIO.
So over how many years have you been seeing this problem?
I'm new as the compliance officer at Prime West Health since October of 2022. Jim, maybe you can.
Well, I think the question, if you're talking about NEMT, that's more recent. The things that we've discovered in terms of in totality, whether it be PCA related or other home and community-based services, that goes back many, many years. I've been with Prime West for 25 years as CEO, and it's been mostly in the last 5 or 10 years. We definitely have seen an uptick, but there's been more attention at the national and the state level in terms of fraud, waste, and abuse, and the regulatory changes that go along with better prevention and intervention in those areas. So I think we've seen heightened increase in awareness by plans, by Prime West, and sending more referrals to the state.
Thank you. All right. So I don't know if you can stay on, but people might have additional questions later. I'm going to move on to Mike Widener. Good morning. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. Michael Widener. I am the Executive Director of the Minnesota Paratransit Providers Association. I've been involved in transportation industry for over 40 years, and I've been as the director of the MPPA for 25 years. During that time, we've advocated for best practices and fraud prevention in the NEMT industry. I want to thank this committee for having these hearings. When this committee held its first hearing in February of 2025, the Department of Human Services was reporting that the number of individual rides in the NEMT industry was about 567,000 rides. I've submitted in my presentation a packet of 3 pages. The first page shows the rides that were provided. This is from the DHS recent RFP. So DHS reported that at the end of last year, the number of rides, the actual number of rides per month had been reduced by over 350,000 rides. It went down from 567,000 rides to 215. That's a 62% reduction in rides. Where did they go? They just vanished. They weren't picked up by any other non-emergency medical transportation department. There's the second page is also from the DHS report, and it provides the numbers, the dollars that were spent on claims in NEMT. And in what I've presented to you, there's a blue box which represents $13 million. That was the expenditures for $1 million just by this department. And shining the light on fraud in the non-emergency transportation industry. Fraud is not new to NEMT. What is new is DHS's complete lack of any attempt or desire to curb fraud. This DHS apathy is disgusting. The lack of ambition at DHS occurred when it started when DHS introduced a broker into the NEMT program. That broker was eventually removed from contracting directly with DHS through state legislation, and that legislation was removed last year. Since I've been active in the industry, we've worked to try to reduce fraud. One of the things we did is we introduced what's called the chain of custody document. Think of it like a FedEx delivery package. When we would deliver, what we had for 1 year before the broker came is when you delivered an individual to a medical provider, the medical provider signed for receiving that person. In just doing that chain of custody, in the fiscal year 2024, it saved over $5 million from the year before. The chain of custody requirement was removed when DHS started contracting with the broker. In 2009, I filed a whistleblower claim with the U.S. Attorney regarding the NEMT broker under the False Claims Act. The U.S. Attorney investigated this matter and informed me, yes, the NEMT broker had billed for services not rendered. However, DHS was fully aware of that overbilling, and DHS had consent to the billing. So therefore, it was not considered a fraudulent billing under the False Claims Act. The third page of my presentation. What you're seeing on the top section is a electronic record of somebody's of a transportation trip provided by a medical transportation provider. This trip dates back to 2015, June 3rd, 2015. This is the solution, my friends, using technology, using GPS, using cameras. What it does is it provides an electronic record of every trip that the car did, and it also provides the number of passengers in the vehicle. So you know if there's 6 people in that vehicle or if there's 1. What the woman that talked about just before me about the fraud and about the activities, those have been going on forever. I mean, we've tried to work with DHS. I went to DHS since at least 2015 and said, require GPS, require cameras. And DHS's answer to me was, how much is it, Mike? I said, it's $30 per vehicle per month. And DHS told me that was too much to expect an NEMT driver to have to pay. And I question that. And when you look at it today, Lyft and Uber require GPS. School buses and protected transportation require GPS and cameras. GPS is nothing new. It's cheap. It stops the fraud. I'm going to end with sort of my last interaction with DHS. When it was, I had a citizen come to me, and he was appalled. He came to me because his 26-year-old son was, Dad, a welfarepreneur. And the dad said, welfarepreneur? He said, yeah. What I do is when I was at the methadone clinic in St. Paul, a recruiter came up to me, and he said, hey, where do you live? I told him I live in South Minneapolis. And then he said, do you know anybody who lives farther away from your address, but still in Hennepin County? And he said, yeah. Dad, I told him about your address. So what they did, the recruiter told him, if you go to this specific company and ride with them, they will pay you $25 a day. So they worked The individual, the son, went to the new provider, and there he received $25 a day, $125 a week. Now that transportation company billed an extra 63 miles for that trip. That's a $75 charge. So the transportation company was pocketing the $75. I went to DHS and I said, all right, I've got the individual, the rider. I have the vehicle, the company. I have the names or the dates that this transportation had. And I thought surely DHS would do something to stop this fraud from continuing, and they would prosecute this company. Instead, DHS explained to me that they were well aware of the problem, and they were working with a broker to fix the problem by limiting methadone passenger use of a specific NEMT company to 30 days. I told DHS, this isn't going to fix the problem. What's going to happen is the passenger will just require the next NEMT company to play the same game. Again, I suggested using and cameras. DHS told me, "Now, Mike, we got it all figured out. The broker, and this is going to fix the problem."
Please try to wrap it up. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, this program integrity, this needs to be fixed. But what you can see is what this department is, or this committee has already done, has already resulted in a 52% decline in NEMT rides. It's sad to say it, but it seems like there's at least 62% of the rides are fraud. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for this witness or other witnesses in general? Representative and Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. I would have a question for DHS about this. If they could
please return to the. Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. I have two questions. One is I want to hear your thoughts on the camera because that seems like a no-brainer. Everyone else does it. And the other is when you look at, is this information accurate that the trips have gone down dramatically since the summer and especially in the last couple months since this has been, put into the fraud bucket of 14 programs? Thank you.
Mr. Conley.
Chair Robbins, Representative Anderson, can you repeat the first part of your question? I think I missed the last word there.
Thank you. I want your opinion, DHS's opinion about requiring cameras like every other, and Lyft, Uber, school buses, everything else, requiring cameras so that we can actually verify that there's a person in the car, where they're going, how many people in the car. So thank you.
And I'll just add also the GPS tracking with the cameras.
Chair Robbins, Representative Anderson, I think both with respect to the cameras and to the GPS technology, we would, certainly don't have opposition to the ideas. I think it's a matter of understanding from the providers, again, the cost. And if that's something that, again, I think is an effective deterrent or device that we can kind of process with the providers as a possible next step in terms of enhancing program integrity. I think that's something we're open to conversation with and, of course, would work with legislators on as well. I think with respect to a couple of other items in the latter part of your question, the claims from the last calendar year have not fully run out yet. So we are aware of the decline in rides that is in the graphic provided here today, but also in our own claims data. And we can't confidently state yet that there has been, in fact, a clear decline in rides because providers do have a year to bill. So it's unclear whether or not there's been any decline in rides or billing, as there are several months left for providers to bill from calendar year 2025. I'll note on the opioid treatment program rides, we do also have a policy in place that randomizes NEMT providers or drivers' rides with respect to opioid treatment program services, given the more sustained nature of that service.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Sval. So it's March 2nd. So now we're starting.
Chair Robbins, Representative Anderson, again, providers have up to a year to bill. So we do have usually claims run out for several months into if we're talking about the last quarter of the prior calendar year into the next year. So it could be multiple months from now before we receive claims from the final quarter of last year.
Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. So historically, what percent of claims come in months later? Not whether there's one or two, or there could be one, but what is the reality historically? Because I would be,
Mr. Conley.
Chair Robbins, Representative Anderson. So I'd have to go back and look at the data in our records with respect to this particular benefit. It can vary by the provider type. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I know that, for example, after certain benefits have ended, you might see in the first several months after the benefit ends, an 80% reduction, for example, in claims that are submitted, but still 20% coming in of the volume you saw in the prior year. Just to give an example of the tail of claim submission that you might see. But I don't know if 20% is something that we'd apply to this particular benefit. I'd have to go back and look at claims history.
Last thing, Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important that you look historically and that we not wait for another 6 or 8 months to go, oh yeah, it is 62% drop. Because this is a big deal. I mean, 62% drop when we're actually starting, we haven't even implemented really fraud prevention, or very little, but we've actually been talking about us. We're scaring off the fraudsters essentially. And so I think that's important. Otherwise, the 62% figure is probably the figure that people are going to start using, that we've had a 62% drop year over year in rides since this was put on the high risk list. So, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is infuriating. It's beyond infuriating. And I don't even have any questions because frankly, I'm sick and tired of hearing excuses. So let's compare two things here. We're looking here at this chart that shows, as has been discussed, 62% drop in the number of rides. And you can see that it starts to fall off in April of last year. And the speculative claim is that, well, people are taking their time to bill. Okay. Can't afford $30 a month per vehicle to have cameras, GPS. Margin just doesn't make it possible. But I can wait 6 months to bill the state for my services. That makes a lot of sense. We're talking about beyond close to 400,000 rides not yet billed for in 2025. That's what we're supposed to believe. The absurdity, and it's an insult to Minnesota's collective intelligence to accept that premise. And I, for one, am not going to submit to it. Let's get to the heart of what this is. This is an incentive problem. And I so much appreciate, over the course of these hearings that we've had, the input from the other side of the table, that the real issue here may be that we're outsourcing public services to private companies. Now, there may be some ideological disagreement as to exactly why that doesn't work, but I think that is the heart of the matter. It's that we have an incentive problem here. When I order an Uber ride, I'm not going to make a deal with the driver to go further away or charge for being further away than I actually need to go, because who has to pay that bill? I do, right? So the incentive for me is to get the best service at the lowest cost. The incentive for the driver is to provide the highest quality service. Those incentives have disappeared from this process, not just in this program, but in the many programs that we've examined over the course of this committee being a thing. That's the heart of it. So, having oversight, having cameras, GPS, that's great. The real issue here is that we've created a situation, we've created an incentive for people to figure out ways to make more money by providing less. And there's nobody on the other side of that transaction should be the agency, should be the taxpayer. There's nobody on the other side of that transaction to incentivize in the other direction of saying, charge me as little as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Representative Hudson. Representative Elkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we expand the electronic visit verification program into EMT, will that help solve this? Which problems that we're talking about this morning would that solve?
Mr. Conley.
Chair Robbins, Representative Elkins, thank you for the question. So that is included in the governor's package with respect to anti-fraud measures, and it would speak to some of the issues here that are being talked about with cameras or GPS, and that EVV does have, again, an end time, a start time and end time, end location, start location, the person providing the service, the person receiving the service, the type of service provided. So it is speaking to a number of the elements that have been raised here today, and it is a part of the governor's anti-fraud package.
Okay. Second question, Madam Chair.
Yes, Representative Elkins.
We've been talking off and on throughout the course of these about the role of MCOs in these various frauds. On slide 10 today, I'll just read the one paragraph. It talks about NEMT site visits and investigations. Each MCO is required to have a special investigations unit, and each MCO crafts their fraud, waste, and abuse detection and prevention practices within the scope of their contracts with DHS. So my understanding is that the MCO special investigation units report suspect fraud to DHS. What are we seeing in those reports? What is the magnitude of the fraud that the MCOs are reporting to DHS? That's probably a question for Mr. Clark, I'm guessing.
Mr. Clark.
Chair Robbins, Representative Elkins, thanks for your question. So the fraud being reported by MCOs for NEMT is similar to what the folks from Prime West testified to. So phantom billing, billing us for a trip when there is no corresponding medical appointment, billing us for excess mileage, kickbacks, I think are an issue in the NEMT program. In terms of referrals, I believe we only had 11 referrals from managed care organizations in 2025. So in terms of total numbers of referrals, it's not that big, but the issues that they are referring are very serious.
On those categories. And so do the MCOs pass those costs on to you, or are they basically eating the expenses from fraud out of their capitated payments?
Mr. Clark.
Chair Robbins, Representative Elkins.
Mr. Conley.
Commissioner Conley, do you know more about MCO finances? Otherwise, I would have to get back to you.
Yeah, part of the reason for capitated payments, Madam Chair, is that to buffer ourselves against these kinds of things. And I know that I've seen data for 2024 that the MCOs basically lost their butts on Medicaid. So if there's
Mr. Conley,
huge fraud in their programs, that could be part of it.
Chair Robbins, Representative Elkins, thanks for the question. So with respect to how the managed care organization's capitation rates function relative to fraudulent activity. So they would in fact eat the cost, so to speak, during that year, that contract year. However, unless the fraud is detected, that utilization would be used to calculate, those claims would be used to calculate managed care rates in the following year. So when we work with our actuaries to increase rates as appropriate based on utilization or rate increases from the legislature, that information, if it's not detected, would then inform the next year's rates.
Yeah.
Yes, Representative.
To the extent that it is detected and reported to Mr. Clark's office, would that, reduce those rates somewhat? I assume that if you have the data, you're not the next year's rates are not going to include that the amount that was reported as fraud.
Mr. Conley.
Chair Robbins, Representative Elkins, sorry, that's correct.
So I appreciate the question. I know Representative Greenman, I'm going to get to you in 1 second, but I had a follow-up question related to that. So UCare has gone under. And I wonder what data you have on how many of their claims in their system were fraudulent, because several of the cases we've seen from Pit Stop and the case involving the fraudster up in Anoka. They were UCare fraud claims for NEMT, and we're forgetting the web here, but it's usually a web of the provider being fraudulent, the NEMT provider, and the interpretive services, and then the service provider who's providing the therapy or the naloxone or whatever. So it's a triple bill of fraud in most of these cases, and UCare seems to have had an inordinate number of those cases. So could you comment on how much of UCare's demise was attributable to fraud?
Chair Robbins, that is a very complicated question to answer. Certainly, all of the plans have fraud. All state Medicaid programs have fraud that they grapple with. So I don't know that I can summarize the contribution of fraudulent billing to UCare's outcome, so to speak, in terms of them kind of ceasing to exist as a health plan. And there were other lines of business like Medicare, like the health insurance exchange MNsure plans that they were involved in or offered. So there are just many elements to the evolution of that plan and the I guess the ending of that plan. So it's hard to answer, but certainly we do have data with respect to fraudulent claims that were reported to us.
Great. I would like you to send that to me. I'd like to know what percentage of UCare's business, was caught up in different fraud schemes, not only in these service lines, but in others. Okay. Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, very rarely will you hear me say that I agree with Representative Hudson. But I do think after a year of being in this committee, what we have seen is the way we have set up these systems, the incentive structures that are in them, the fragmentation. I heard brokers and MCOs, states and county, the state, and in many cases, this is a failed federal and state project of how the feds have set this up, requiring a benefit that then we have set up a statutory scheme that involves a multitude of providers. We have outsourced the oversight in some cases to MCOs or to brokers, and we have different folks doing the vetting from the overseeing and administering from the payment. And so just before you even get to people, to the providers, you've created a system where it's a leaky bucket and very, very hard to oversee. And so the question we're asking now is, in some cases, how do we, and we've done a lot, how do we plug and add overseeing? And I want to get to cameras in a second. But to me, the question, if we're serious about this for the long term, which we should be, because people need to get to their appointments. And as we talk about people getting to their appointments, we're talking about some people just need a ride, but other people are going to be on a stretcher. And that's why the Medicaid program has said this is a critical service, which it is. We need to ensure that people are getting there safely and that we are paying for it and overseeing it and doing it in a way that makes sense. And I think we're not going to get there until we look back and say, how do we actually design this program differently so that it doesn't have at least 4 different places where there can be a target for billing, for all the, overbilling all the way to providing billing for services you're not providing. And I think that this is the thing when we just have a conversation about GPS and cameras, and I want to get back to Uber and Lyft actually don't require cameras in their cars because, and they told them this came out in litigation, if they do, they're worried about misclassification because they have so much control over their drivers, so they chose not to. It matters in that context because it's a way to prevent sexual assault in cars, which is currently being litigated across the country. But what matters here is it's about incentive structures. For sure, we should have GPS and cameras in the cars, but the best way to do what we want to do is actually step back and say, what's the most efficient way to provide this service that is not just adding more cameras in cars and more people presumably at the state to watch the videos of the cameras in the cars. I don't know if we would have a misclassification problem or if they should just be state or county employees. But it does bring me to this question, which is when we talk about the incentive structures and the business model, it seems to me we need to get better at thinking about how publicly required services can be publicly provided, and we should not add all of these private incentive structures in. I'm wondering, one, if there are other states who are thinking and doing that with this, either in pilot program or in actual, their system to scale, actually providing these services in a way that cuts out the and the private providers and actually creates an incentive structure to say we should pay for this service because we know what it costs. We know how much it costs to pay someone. We know how much the gas costs. We can put a camera in their car and ensure that. Is there any state in the country that is doing that? Is my first question.
Mr. Conley.
Chair Robbins, Representative Greenman, that's a good question. So Connecticut is an example of a state that has a single kind of administrator broadly and not an MCO overseeing the benefits or processing claims, things of that nature with respect to its program. And it is solely fee for service in terms of the way that providers are paid and the way that the administrator operates the program. But they still do have a vendor doing that work for them to process the claims. It's not just state staff who are doing that work. So I'd have to go and kind of check with my colleagues in other states, and we have ways of doing that. We do it regularly. Can certainly answer the question for you to see if other states are purely directly operating an NEMT program with their own staff, but it's likely rare.
Thank you, Representative Greenman.
Thank you. And I'm actually asking a different question because as we saw in Feed Our Future, lunch ladies don't commit fraud. The fraud was happening when we outsourced the administration and then the provision. I don't know we have work to do on ensuring that Metro Mobility is what people need it to be, but we're not here talking about the county and Met Council administering fraud or administering a program. We're not talking about individual rides and fraud in that context, or bus drivers is another good example. Like there is a reason that when we talk about the public transportation systems, we often are not talking about fraud. And part of it is because we have designed the system so that the incentive structures that Representative Hudson is talking about are to provide the services that people ask for at the cost of providing those services, plus the wages and benefits that people negotiate for and deserve under the law. And so I think we really have to get to yes to all the individual things, and I'm glad to hear it. It felt like it was a little bit lost in this conversation that one of the responses to what we have been seeing is bringing the administration of this benefit into one single state administrator. That feels like a good first step. That's at least we're not outsourcing the oversight. But the question is, how do we change the incentive structure? I think we actually have to get, and that's probably the committee, whether it's transportation or whether it's HHS, but really start thinking about that. Otherwise, I worry we're going to be back here in 5 years, because what we've learned about these fraudsters in the public programs and frankly across our economy is they are innovative and they respond to the incentive structures we create. So let's just get them out of the program. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Friedman. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This has been a fascinating discussion this morning, and I first wanted to ask to the two of you at the table, the Deputy Commissioner and to Mr. Clark. I mean, you have a lot of experience with this even before you took this role with DHS as you were over at the Attorney General's office. Are the governor's recommendations, do they meet all of the things that the two of you would advocate for to protect the public's dollars?
Inspector General Clark.
Chair Robbins, Representative Schultz, I think the governor's recommendations are important and will help. I mean, I think we're all aware there's no magic bullet solution, right, to these problems, but there's things that will help, right? I think one of the biggest things we can do as a state is better vetting of businesses and people on the front end, right? If folks pose too big a risk, if they have no history providing these services, financial capacity to provide these services, we should probably have better locks on our door and keep them from entering our programs. Either unserious business, important, managed care needs to step up its game. I mean, a lot of the fraud we've seen, housing stabilization services in the news, the Pit Stop 66 case that was prosecuted by the Attorney General's office with the fraud scheme, the transportation fraud scheme from Faribault up to the Twin Cities. That the majority of that is happening in managed care, right? So we need to have better managed care
Sorry,
oversight.
I didn't know it was still on.
And then also the electronic visit verification for rides. I think that will help a lot for transportation trips.